Scott, Executive Pastor here, and it's more than an honor to worship with you this evening and be a part of God speaking to us. That question out of the text Katie just read, Jesus asking the question, do you understand what I've done for you? He asks that to us as well as his disciples there on that evening. They ate the Passover, and then he washed their feet. Do you understand what I've done for you? If we're honest, most of us would answer, if not all of us, no, Jesus, I don't really. I mean, we can talk about it and define it, but no, I don't really understand what you've done for me. And I know now I'm going into 46 years of stumbling after Jesus. And so I can dig deep into some of the orthodox truths. I can hold a conversation about free will and predestination. I can talk as honest as humanly possible about loving Jesus and yet still being so selfish. I can dig deep into the problem of pain. How can a good God allow hurtful things happen? And maybe you're in that same camp as well, that you've been on the path, or maybe you have a mind that can really dig well into these truths, into these things. But there's a point where what we know, what we can express that we know reaches its human limit. Like I said, your limit may be more than mine or less than mine, but there's some place where when Jesus says, do you understand what I've done for you? We must be honest and say, not quite. The incarnation, the crucifixion, the resurrection, these deep truths. For me, sometimes it's like standing on the lip of the Grand Canyon. And I can see all around me the real world, the beautiful colors, the clouds. It's infinite, it's touchable. It's understandable, but as you look across, if you've ever been there, it stretches out and it's intricate and there are clouds and mist. And in this metaphor, that side then is infinite. And often that's where we are with these deep truths that Jesus brought, that Jesus lived, that Jesus is talking to us about tonight. On one side, we are there finite, and then the other side is infinite, God himself. And we can't quite see it. We can't quite reach it. And those questions we have about life and death and faith and God, and they are too much for us often. And those questions meet finite questions with infinite answers in a place that for me seems like the Grand Canyon. There are so many of those questions where we can wrestle as Isaiah is told by God, come, let us reason together. And we can think and talk and dig and study. And yet again, there's simply this place, this Grand Canyon, this chasm, this explosive, jagged rift. And no matter how hard we try, we can't reach the other side. We shout out, and the echo rolls back, but we can't hear it or understand it. And often, standing on that lip, we have a choice. And this seems like the world that we're living in. So many people today, and maybe you're one of them, and this isn't a judgment, it's just a place marker that say there is no such thing as infinity. There's no such thing as God. There's no spiritual life. Everything is material and right here before us. Yet we stand on that place of not knowing, in that gap, and we can't explain the gap. If we can explain everything, where's the thorough explanation? And maybe you're in the camp of, yes, you believe and understand that there's something more, that there is infinite, there is a God. But then you believe that all of that can be explained, can be answered. That if you dig deep enough, you'll find the explanation for pain, the explanation for how the infinite joined finite in the person of Jesus Christ. But I think the reality is that most of us, if we're not in denial, or if we're not in that place where we think we can hold or explain all the answers, is a place of accepting or receiving mystery. In that canyon, we can look and say, there's more than me, and I can't understand all of it. Early in Tolstoy's novel, War and Peace, page 61 in my version, which may be as far as many of us have made it in that massive but beautiful novel. There's a scene in which an anonymous priest is giving last rites to a dying count. And it's a chaotic scene with all kinds of people and almost every character that's going to be in the story from then on. And this count dying is a crucial part of the story. And they're giving him last rites. And as they do so, the priest congratulates the dying man on eating the bread and drinking the wine. He congratulates him in receiving the mystery. And that phrase stopped me in my reading, and I had to go back and reread it a couple of times. Number one, I'm not of Tolstoy's version of Christianity, the Orthodox, and so it took me a while to realize that they call the sacraments, particularly communion, the mystery. And so what the priest was congratulating the dying man on is, you have received last rites. You have received the body and the blood of Christ. Congratulations. Isn't that an odd thing to think or believe? But for me, it struck me as more than simply a ceremony of last rites or even a sacrament. It seemed to me that life, not just death, life, not just sacraments, is about receiving the mystery. That there are so many things in this Christian faith and even outside this Christian faith that we, like I said, we simply cannot hold in our hands. And the more we wrestle for control, the more we try to define and delineate and explain everything, the more our lives seem to go out of control. We are a people that have more knowledge at our fingertips than all the people in the past had combined. And yet we also are a people that have more anxiety, more fear than ever before. And I believe that's in part because we struggle to receive the mystery. We struggle to answer the question that Jesus asked. Do you understand what I've done for you? We don't want to admit that the answer is not very well, Lord. Not very well. Luke 22, in Luke 22, Luke's version of the Last Supper, he writes, when the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table. And he said to them, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it finds fulfillment in the kingdom of God." After taking the cup, he gave thanks and said, "Take this and divide it among yourselves, for I tell you, I will not drink from it, the fruit of the cup, until the kingdom of God comes." And he took the bread and gave thanks and broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And in the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is a new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. But the hand of him who is going to betray me is with me on the table." My picture of that last line is that at that point, everybody goes like this. Not me. Eat this Passover. I deeply desire to eat this Passover with you. So here's one of those places where we would be honest to say, I really don't understand what you've done for me, for us. Because one of the mysteries is the incarnation. We can talk about it. We can get somewhere to defining it. We have it in our creeds. Theologians have studied it and written about it for centuries. And yet the real how and why is beyond us. How could a God so holy and perfect love such tarnished and unlovable people? How could he sit down at a meal and serve his body and blood to people who were going to betray him, who people were going to desert him? Which doesn't that define us sometimes as well? No, Lord, I don't really understand. God with us, the incarnation. The only explanation is love, but even that's a mystery too, right? What is love? Why is it so powerful? How does it work? Is it more than a feeling? Question after question. And then he goes on and says, "This is my body. This is a covenant in my blood." And now the true debate starts, right? Some of the greatest Christian thinkers have argued over what Jesus meant by "this is my body," a covenant in my blood. He didn't use "seems like" metaphor for, he said, "This is my body." And so Ignatius, Augustine, Martin Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, and other great minds have argued over the centuries. What does that mean? And the church fathers and the Catholics said that it means that it is his physical body, that it transubstantiates. I believe that almost every answer we've given to that question, how does that happen, why does that happen, is an effort to get control of mystery, to understand something that's beyond us. But the interesting thing about transubstantiation is it doesn't answer the mystery, it creates another one. And so too with Zwingli's approach, which it's simply a symbol, a memorial. Do this in remembrance of me. But the mystery comes in that understanding in this, that what we do later at this table is transformative. It fills us with grace and power. It is more than a memory. We may talk about it that way, but how often have you and I been in a state of doubt and sin and prayed for forgiveness and received his grace through something that people talk about as just a symbol? They too miss the mystery because there's a new mystery. If it's simply bread and wine, how does it do what it does? How does it bring Christ to us? And then there's those of us who try to land somewhere in the middle and say that it is Christ's true presence spiritually, delivering grace. It's a physical thing that sustains us. The food, if we ate enough of it, would sustain us. But even just eating a small part of it sustains us and transforms us and gives us life spiritually. And that's a sacramental view. But again, there's mystery. How? Why? What we have to do at that place is receive the mystery, as Tolstoy put it in his novel. Receive the mystery. And so this first movement of the Maundy Thursday service, of that last night of Jesus' life is simply this. Do you understand what I'm doing for you, what I've done for you? And our answer is no, not completely. Give me the faith to receive it, to go on. Receive the mystery of God with us. God with us now, God with us in the sacrament, God with us when we go home. God is never not with us. And there's a mystery in that because a lot of the times we don't sense or know his presence. Like the disciples on the road to Emmaus, Jesus is there the whole time, talking with them, walking with them, and they don't recognize him. Receive the mystery of God with us. The second movement of this, the second question is Jesus not simply taking something tactile like bread and wine and saying, I am in this, but taking something as common in their day as a foot washing and turning it upside down, turning it into something else. These are normal, everyday things that Jesus enters into or gives deeper meaning to. And of course, that's his being with us constantly. So Jesus washes their feet. And in order to bolster support for my discomfort with this ceremony, so I have a deformed foot. I'm really sensitive about my feet, and I would avoid foot washing at all costs. And the more people I talked to, the more I had on my side. It's like, no, we don't want to do this. As a matter of fact, what did Peter say? No, you can't wash my feet. I mean, I'm with Peter, right? I'm there. Are you there? This is awkward. And what is that? What is that about? I was talking with Sarah about it, and she gave me this little sermon that was so convicting because she talked about vulnerability. And that's what it's about. And so what mystery are we receiving here? It's the mystery of God serving us. Because if we could get our mind around the fact that God came and put himself in a body, okay, I can receive that. But then wouldn't you be a king or a general or something? No, he takes his clothes off and kneels down as a servant. We, in the natural order, always think that the greater served by the lesser. As a matter of fact, that's how our world works. We call it injustice and we fight against it, but then it takes on a new form. Jesus was doing something that turned the natural order upside down. And that's why when he asked the question, do you understand what I've done for you? In this case, we say, no, absolutely not. Somebody has to be in charge. Somebody has to be in control. God can't just come and wash people's feet. He has to make a program and pass laws and build armies. But no, with 12 people, maybe more, he knelt down in his underwear and washed their feet. You have trouble with that? I do. No, Jesus, I don't understand. I like the natural order. I don't want to be vulnerable. I want to be in charge. I want to control things. I want to know what's coming next. C.S. Lewis wrote this in The Problem of Pain. After all, you must have the capacity to receive, or even omnipotence can't give. This is another example of where we're being called to receive when we want to be the givers. We want to be the ones on top. That's what Peter was struggling with. That's what I struggle with, that vulnerability. Letting you serve me. You letting me serve you. Jesus says, do you understand what I've done for you? No, this doesn't make sense. Have you heard the phrase, the kingdom upside down, or the upside down kingdom? This is really one of the major places that idea comes from, because we would have done it differently. He does it as a servant. And the power of that action was greater than all the armies, all the dictates, all the control we could ever muster. In the last piece, we see that it was before the Passover festival in John 13:1. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. That last phrase is editorial by John. He says, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. We're being called in our life in Christ to receive the mystery of the incarnation, God with us, to receive the mystery of a servant God, not a conquering God, and to receive the mystery of God loving us to the end. Maybe this is the hardest truth for us to receive. In my years in pastoral ministry, I know in my own heart and life and the life of people around me, most of us have worked our way into the kingdom, we believe. We believe that if we do this and do that and do this, God will love us. And yet this is no, receive the love. It's a given. It's a gift. You can't earn it. As a matter of fact, think of the people at the table again. They were in the act of betraying him. And he loved them to the end. This is a hard truth. I don't deserve his love, so I must earn it. As a counselor, I so often get with people and we dig deep into the issues, and the issue that finally rises is this one so often. God can't love me. I don't deserve God's love. He can love you. You're a pastor. He can't love me. But that's a lie. The mystery that's so hard for us to receive, to lean into, is that we are loved unconditionally to the end. He was stripped of all his power, his clothing, his rights, everything. And so there are three events in this worship gathering tonight. We will receive the mystery of the incarnation in the sacrament of communion. We will receive the mystery of a God who serves instead of conquers in the foot washing. The way that's going to take place is as you're ready. We're not going to have any signals, just as you're ready to do it. Gather with one or two other people. Come forward to one of the 6 stations, go to the back to one of the 3, and wash one another's feet and practice that, the power of love and service. And then the final movement tonight will be some of our servant ladies stripping the altar, removing everything from it. In a symbolic movement, that's the last act of this night that Jesus did for us, is he went to the garden and he asked his friends to pray with him, and they didn't. And he prayed out to God and said, "Take this cup from me," and God didn't speak to him. And then he was stripped and betrayed. And so this table stripping is symbolic of that last mystery that we're being asked to receive. That is a God who loved us to the end and even beyond, to being stripped, to being abandoned, to being alone, emotionally distraught, that it came out physically. Receive the mystery of the incarnation, God with us. Receive the mystery of the servant God, and receive the mystery of the God who loves us until the end. Again, this does not mean that we don't study and learn and grow. It means when we reach the end of ourselves, God is there. And he wants us to get to the end of ourselves. He's not afraid of that. We are, but he's not at all. If I can't explain it, if I can't be in charge of it, if I can't earn love or praise for doing it, I often don't want it. I distance myself from it. I move back from the edge of the Grand Canyon. But Jesus, in his love and his grace, just keeps calling us forward. Come, receive the mystery of a God who's with you, a servant God, and a God who loves us to the end. Do you understand what I've done for you, he says? Kind of. Yeah. No. He still says, come.